The world has been proven to be a globe many times throughout history. As far back as the 6th century BC, the Pythagoreans believed in a round Earth. Aristotle gave observations. The curved shadow on the moon during an eclipse, the way ships vanished over the horizon, the changing stars as you travel south. Eratosthenes went further, measuring the size of the Earth using nothing more than shadows in two cities. Magellan's expedition circumnavigated the world, sailing west until they returned home from the east. But today, I want to talk about a more modern proof. And the funny thing is, the explorers who gave it to us weren't trying to prove the world is a globe at all. They were chasing glory at the bottom of the earth. In 1911 and 1912, two rival explorers, Roald Amundsen of Norway and Robert Falcon Scott of Britain, set out from opposite sides of the Ross Ice Shelf. They started nearly 30 degrees of longitude apart. Each man led his team straight south, and yet both arrived at the exact same point, the geographical South Pole. Their race proved beyond doubt that the Earth is a globe. Amundsen originally was planning to go to the North Pole, but in secret he changed course. He aimed instead for the South Pole, shocking the world. Scott was already preparing his Terra Nova expedition. When he learned that Amundsen was in the race, he pressed on anyway. The two men were not conspirators. They were rivals, determined, proud, and competing for the same goal. Each led his own team, laid his own depots, and chose his own route. Cordial, yes. Professional, yes. But united, never. This was a true race, carried out in parallel, not in collusion. Amundsen built his base at the Bay of Wells, 87 degrees, 30 minutes south, 160 degrees west. Scott built his hut at Cape Evans on Ross Island, 77 degrees, 38 minutes south, 166 degrees east. Nearly the same latitude, but 30 degrees apart in longitude. About 700 kilometers of separation at that parallel. On a flat Earth, two paths due south from those longitudes could never meet, but on a globe, their meridians converge at the South Pole. Amundsen relied on dogs, skis, and a rapid pace. Scott brought ponies, man-hauling, and experimental motor sledges, which quickly broke down. Each man laid out his own deposits of supply. Each carved his own route through the transatlantic mountains. Amundsen up the Axel Heiberg Glacier, Scott up the Beardmore. They used different strategies, different trails, and never crossed paths, but both pushed relentlessly south. On December 14th, 1911, Amundsen's team reached the South Pole. They planted the Norwegian flag, they built a tent they called Polheim, and just in case they didn't make it back alive, they left behind two letters, one addressed to their king and one addressed to Scott. 5 weeks later, on January 17th, 1912, Scott's weary party arrived. They found the tent, the flag, and Amundsen's letter waiting for them. Scott recorded in his diary their crushing disappointment. The Norwegians had been there first. How does this prove a globe? The two expeditions, 30 degrees of longitude apart, each marching due south and both arriving at the exact same spot on Earth. That geometry is impossible on a flat plane. And how do we know that they actually made it there? Scott carried Amundsen's letter away with him. When his frozen body was found months later, the letter was still there, proof that both men had stood at the pole. The artifacts, the diaries, the photographs all match. And because the expeditions had been entirely separate, there could be no collusion. Their rivalry was real. Their convergence at the pole was proof of the globe. Amundsen and his men returned safely in good health, celebrated as heroes. Scott and his companions died on the return march, trapped by storms, only 11 miles from their largest depot. But Scott's journal and the recovered letter survived. The world now had two independent sets of records, two teams, two trails, two stories, all verifying the same geographic reality. There is one South Pole. In chasing glory, Scott and Amundsen proved something far greater than national pride. They showed that all the world's meridians meet at a single point. They started apart, they marched south, and they met at the South Pole. You don't need satellites. You don't need space photos. In 1911 and 1912, the race to the South Pole proved the globe. Please like my video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.